from Ukraine, a diplomatic end to the standoff.
We are ready to sit down and discuss with them, but at the same time, we are prepared for the worst.
More from our Mike Gracia in Washington.
The Russian military said it had pulled back some troops near Ukraine. In Washington, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
It would be positive if it was verified that they pulled back their troops. And certainly the openness to diplomacy is something that everybody should support.
President Joe Biden cautioned
Russia proceed, we will rally the world to oppose this aggression.
the U.S. and NATO continue to warn Russia could invade at any time. Mike Gracia, Washington.
A huge fire is burning on Long Island, New York this morning. Authorities say a tanker carrying gasoline lost control and crashed into a vacant showroom at the Rockville Center. One building's collapsed. Several firefighters are reporting.
Okay, I have Reverend Johnson on the line. Would you like me to put her through?
Thank you for asking. Absolutely.
His role during the arrest of George Floyd was only to control traffic and onlookers.
Reverend Johnson?
Relying on fellow officers to
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
medical needs. Tao and two
I
others
am fine, Sandy. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're up on
charges of
Facebook
violating
now.
Floyd's constitutional
Okay.
rights
So that you
during
know.
the arrest that ended in his
And, okay, let me just pull this. Okay, great. I'm just pulling this information. How about that? Okay, but you doing okay?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
All is well.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. I don't think I got this. I think I missed something here. Okay, that's what I was. Oh boy, it's like two of my big stories. They've opened this wonderful women's clinic for really aimed at serving Black women in Cleveland.
Mm.
You know, because I mean, there were just so many, but women just in general, we're poorly served by the medical establishment. You know, because we're hysterical and all of that. And you just look at the maternal mortality with Black, white, brown, yellow, and red women in the United States, and you see that. I mean, we're the worst of the so-called developed nations, which is like crazy, you know?
Mm. Yes. And when you were discussing Serena Williams, that's ridiculous. Absolutely.
She almost died up in that hospital. I'll tell you that. She almost died in that hospital.
And we know our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, I didn't think she did. I mean, this is one of the best conditioned human beings on earth. And they would not listen to her. You know, they wouldn't listen to her. But it happens all the time to women of every conceivable background. You know, it happens all the time. And I just think it's high time that we really talked about it, you know?
Kudos to Cleveland. Kudos to Cleveland.
Kudos to Cleveland. We need that here. You know?
Yeah.
We need that. We need that here. And they named 3 of the rooms after 3 of the women who were experimented on during slavery, our enslaved ancestors. Yeah, Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy.
Okay, we have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Yep. And so that's just wonderful knowing that you know that they have that. And they just opened it for Valentine's Day. So I'm very happy to see that. So we're going to be talking with them today, as a matter of fact, about that and about why they opened it and what it is that they see. Thank you so much for that great show. Of our mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Praise God. Continue with that day. let's get right to it.
Okay, 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you, dear. Thank you. Let's have a okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am free.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, taking over the reins from Air America and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with everyone today. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support. It's continuing to grow. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on my official Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's where you can reach me, everybody. And I'm trying to get caught up with all these messages. I'm trying to thank you for being so patient with me as I'm trying to answer. I'm thinking about doing something like a Facebook Live so I can speak to everybody, maybe once a month or so. Let me know what you think about that, just so I can answer these messages. It's easier to talk through answering the messages than it is to write every single one, and I really try to do that. We're going to be talking about, of course, maternal mortality, but we're looking at women's health care specifically. Men, we are going to get around to you, our dear brothers, but we're talking about specifically a clinic in Cleveland that was just opened on Valentine's Day that targets Black women in particular, given the fact that Black women are 3 times more likely to die in pregnancy or in postpartum, during the postpartum period. But Black, white, brown, yellow, and red women, women of every background, particularly African-American women, Hispanic women, and indigenous women, are particularly vulnerable to death while trying to have children. But it doesn't stop there. With breast cancer, with cervical cancer, I mean, there are a lot of things that are missed with women, a lot of issues, a lot of illnesses, and a lot of little things that get written off that could cost us our lives. So we want to talk about that today. And then we're going to be talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case. That is playing itself out now. What we saw was the state case, but now you have the federal case. What's the difference and what's going on? Did you hear about the Black FedEx driver who was shot at? A white father and son was shooting at him while he was trying to do his work. What is going on, everybody? And then you've also got the George Floyd case. It's continuing in Minnesota because the other police officers who watched George Floyd get choked to death, well, they're on trial now. There's so much going on, and we've got to go over all of it on the Santita Jackson Show. So let's get right to it so that we can get some good news from Pastor Vicki Johnson. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, and give me your thoughts. Let me know, have you been watching the Olympics? Now America's in 3rd place, continuing to grow in the medal count. Go Team USA. I love it. I love it. I love it. In Chicago, boy, it's going to be positively spring-like today. 51 degrees above zero, showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 24 degrees above zero, cloudy. On Wall Street yesterday, the Dow closed up, get this, 422 points. The NASDAQ closed up 348 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 69 points. Boy, they're having a great time on Wall Street. What about Main Street? In the NBA, the Timberwolves were triumphant over the Hornets, 126-120, and the Kings will be playing the Bulls here in Chicago tonight. And tonight, the Raptors will be meeting the Timberwolves, everybody, and the Wild will be at the Jets. Everybody. The United States is 3rd in the medal count behind Norway and Germany, and just behind the U.S., Austria, Sweden, Netherlands, China, Switzerland, Russia, and France. Wonderful games, controversial games. But you know what? There is a feel-good story that comes out of the games. We have Erin Jackson. She took home the gold skating the 500 meter for Team USA, and she's the first Black woman and just the second Black athlete to win an individual Olympic medal in any speed skating event. And It turns out she almost missed this moment. Despite being the number one ranked skater in the women's 500 meter going into the Olympic trials, she slipped during her qualifying race. But guess what? Remember this name. Her friend, Brittany Bowe, who came in first, gave up her spot so that Jackson could compete in Team USA. She said of her friend and teammate, she deserves it. She was already going to be competing in the 1,000 meter and the 1,500 Olympic races. But I just felt, Pastor Johnson, that we needed to acknowledge Brittany Bowe for that magnificent act of generosity. I mean, because this enabled the woman who is the best, who has proved herself to be the best in that particular event. It gave her the opportunity. It wouldn't have happened if her friend had not given her a little bit of support. Sandy Hook, the families of several victims killed in the 2012 Sandy Hook elementary school shooting have reached a $73 million settlement with Remington, the now bankrupt manufacturer of the AR-15 style rifle used in the massacre that left 20 children and 6 adults dead in Newtown, Connecticut. The family sued Remington in 2014. It's taken them a long time. To get what they're not calling justice. They said that justice would be getting their children back, would be getting their loved ones back. They allege that the gun maker should be held partially responsible for the shooting because of its marketing strategy that allegedly reinforced military-style images of combat weapons. And remember, they do shoot live rounds in many high schools across the country in junior ROTC training. Think about that, everybody. So call me and let me know what you think about that. 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are declining across the country. More than 2,000 Americans are still dying every day due to the virus. The U.S. is now averaging 151,000 plus new COVID cases, according to Johns Hopkins, stark difference from the peak of more than 800,000 cases per day a month ago. Are we in herd immunity, everybody? Let me know what you think. Prince Andrew has reached an out-of-court settlement in a sexual abuse lawsuit against him. Wow, everybody. And get this, everybody. The Moderna CEO says it's reasonable to think the pandemic may be in its final stages. What do you think? Do you think that may be the case? The fact is only 27.6% of Americans have gotten their boosters, which means more than 70% of Americans are not actually fully vaccinated. So what does that mean, everybody? Moderna's CEO said it's reasonable, as he put it, to assume that we may be approaching the final stages of the pandemic. What do you think about this? And here is some great news, Pastor Vicky. Scientists have possibly cured HIV in a woman for the first time. An American research team reported, oh my gosh, I hope that is true. It has reported that it has possibly cured a woman HIV in a woman for the first time, building on past successes as well as failures in the HIV cure research field, according to this NBC report. Their patients stepped into a rarefied club that includes 3 men whom scientists have cured or very likely cured of HIV. I hope that is the case, everybody. We need to wipe out HIV and AIDS. We need to do it. We need to do it. We need to do it. Pastor Vicki Johnson, now that is some good news.
Yes, that is. That is. That's the area that we worked diligently in from the mid-90s through the around 2010. HIV/AIDS education and spiritual counseling and case management, because we are disproportionately impacted by the virus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is good. That is good news. Yes.
Oh, well, I am so glad about that. So, well, you know what? Give me some more good news today.
All right. Good morning, Santita. And good morning to your morning stars and friends. There is more good news. My favorite form of exercise is swimming. As a matter of fact, Santita, your mother, Mrs. J, and she used to swim with me.
She loves that.
Yeah, and we want her back. I didn't learn to swim until 2000. You see, my family had a tragedy when I was around 6 years old. It was a lovely summer day when there was a knock on our door. A relative came to tell my father that his brother, my Uncle Tommy, and Uncle Tommy's son, Tommy Jr., had drowned in Lake Michigan. They had gone fishing. Tommy Jr. fell into the lake, and Uncle Tommy jumped in to save him. Neither of them could swim, and they both drowned. This traumatized me to the point that I had a fear of water and never learned to swim. Not even when 4 years of swimming was required while I was a student at Kenwood High School here in Chicago. Well, through prayer and determination, I learned to swim, and now I swim at least a half a mile 3 times a week. The hardest part of swimming for me is not the activity itself. It is getting out of the door, especially in the winter. I'm an early riser, so getting out of bed is no problem. But I have to talk myself into getting out of the door. I don't believe I'm the only one who has door issues. What door do you have problems going through? What door is keeping you from your good? Is it a door of fear? Is it a door of anxiety? Is it a door of hate? Is it a door of despair or a door of lack of determination? Whatever door it is that is keeping you from your good, now is the time to talk yourself into getting out of the door. Once I am in the water, swimming up and down the pool, I feel so good, refreshed and rejuvenated. And when I'm finished, there is such a sense of accomplishment. Today, I want to encourage you to get out of the door, whatever that door might be, and walk into your good. If you will do this, and I believe you will, then to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. Walk through that door. Oh my gosh. And we all have something. I'm just trying to figure out how you got through Kenwood without getting that swimming requirement, but I'll leave that alone because wow. Oh wow. I don't know how you did it.
Well, my aunt was my freshman gym teacher, and so I kind of slid that way. But the rest of the time, they pay attention to the ones that can swim, and the rest of us are just down there in the shallow water playing around.
Really?
And as long as you can do the jellyfish float, you can pass the class.
Oh no! Look, let me tell you something. My mother took us to the Y on 71st Street here on the South Side. And Jack Hall, that's right. Jack Hall used to throw you in the water. And my mother was like, yep, you're going to get thrown in. She said, you're not going to stand up here. You will swim. We were like, oh, no, mother, please, Mom, please don't do it. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. But Jack Hall, thank you very much. May he rest in heavenly peace. He would, and he was blind. But he could tell by the way you hit the water. If you were diving in, if you had flopped in, he could hear how many, just the strokes. If you were swimming properly, he was an absolute genius.
Yes.
And my mother, Mrs. Betty Odom, of Betty O's. Oh my goodness, the woman the black woman who brought the whole aesthetic movement to Chicago, and of course she used to be the host of Sunday in Chicago on NBC. And who's a registered nurse. She was married to, the big dentist, Dr. Herbie Odom, who went on, he was in, remember when he was boxing and he was on all over the
Yes.
national news because he was this big
Yes.
dentist who decided he was going to be a boxer. But he was also a dentist who couldn't read or write until he got to college. They found out he was dyslexic, but he worked so hard that he went on and powered through undergrad, powered through dental school, and just really led a legendary life. We've known some really great people. I love you, Pastor Vicki Johnson. Are you worshiping in person yet, or are we still online?
We're still online, but the first Sunday in March, we will go back in person.
Okay, how can we join you on Sunday?
You can join us on Facebook Live at St. Thomas Lutheran Church, Chicago at 11:45 a.m. till 12:15 p.m., a half hour of power, as you love to call it.
Boom, you got it now. I said it. Look, God
That's
gave it
it.
to you. God
That's
gave it
it.
to me to give to you. Take it. Okay.
I got it.
Sending you much love. Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody, meet them on the St. Thomas Lutheran Church of Chicago Facebook page, 11:45 to 12:15. It will be well worth your while. It will just lift your spirit. Thank you, Pastor Vicki Johnson. Walk through that door, everybody.
Thank you.
You know, before stay right here because we have got, of course, Dr. Deborah Furholden, who's going to set the table for us as we bring on, of course, Dr. Shanina Knighton, and a special guest today, Dana Lankford. She's done something so wonderful. She and her team have done something so wonderful. They are really serving an underserved community, Dr. Deborah Furholden, by opening this Village of Healing Center in Cleveland, Ohio, where I have so many of my friends. My prom date was from Cleveland. Love it. But this is we're underserved. And when you hear that Black and brown and indigenous women really literally put our lives on the line to have children, but it doesn't stop there. But we're not paid attention to. Even Serena Williams suffered from that and almost died after she had her baby, Olympia. So, Dr. Furholden, why is it important that we focus on maternal mortality, which for all women, white, black, brown, yellow, and red in the United States is just unbelievably high? What is it? I mean, when you have the Village of Healing Center, what does that do for women who are overlooked, Dr. Verholden?
Well, we know that women, have been having children for centuries. Mm-hmm. And there's so much innovation that we have and so many supports. That's a birthright. Having a baby is a birthright. And so the goal is that everybody be able to experience that and mom and baby both be safe in that process. So I love these birthing centers and these really safe homes for moms, especially moms of color, to get everything that they need to experience that and the joy and the blessing of it. But there's just so much. I mean, I reflect on my own experience having a child. And as an example, my son was born with a condition called a syndactyly. So he had two of his little middle fingers were connected. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, what happened is, while, he was gestating, something went wrong. And those two fingers didn't separate. And he came out, and I thought, oh, isn't that cute? He's got a little webbed finger, not the end of anything. But then the doctor said, no, at the same time his fingers are forming, so are his kidneys or his this or his that. So immediately after he was born, he got whisked away. And, I had to spend my first several hours without my son. And what that made me think is just how precious all of that is. Like how much could possibly happen, in that process. And just how blessed we are to have it go a particular way. And so, everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves that. And for people who are dealing with stress and trauma, undernutrition, unstable housing, unstable employment, their needs are even greater. And so we need to get those supports in place for people because the inequity that we see is not brand new and it's not by accident. Our system was designed this way. It was designed for not everybody to get high quality care. That's how that was baked in to our society. And so I think there's a lot that we can do to undo that, but everybody deserves to have the opportunity to have a safe and healthy pregnancy, and with mom and baby, both coming through alive and well.
Well, we're going to be talking about that today, and not just as it relates to pregnancy. I mean, we got so many stories yesterday, Dr. Furholden, and then Dr. Knighton, and Nurse Lankford. We got so many stories about people who had been overlooked, by the medical establishment, by the doctors, and who had not been treated well in the hospital, in the doctor's office, and who walked away feeling some kind of way. One of our Santita Jackson Morningstar's family, she felt that there was something wrong with her baby. She was a 19-year-old mother, like my mom was. And you don't know anything. You don't know anything, please, at 39. You don't know. Not like I know, because I don't have any kids, but I would imagine. And it turns out she left Atlanta, came to Chicago just days after the birth of her child, and the child had a dislocated shoulder. But no one listened to this mother. And I can only imagine the pain she felt, the guilt she might have felt, and Dr. Furholden, maybe the pain the child felt. I have a couple of minutes left here. What do you want us to know today?
Well, I never really shared this with a lot of people, but my mom was also a very young mother. Mm-hmm. My mother had children at 15, 17, and 19. Mm-hmm. I'm the baby. So my mom had 3 kids by the time she was 19. Mm-hmm. And she lost her first baby. She carried her first baby to full term. Ooh. And these were my sister, who even though I've never met, I feel very connected to. Mm-hmm. But my sister was born in 1970. We had things like sonograms that were beginning to be popular in use, but they weren't using those kinds of things on poor Black teenage mothers at the time. They had limited resources in hospitals. This is right on that era of where Black people were still kind of being treated in separate wards, because they didn't want the same equipment touching those people to touch certain other people, stuff like that. And so my mom's baby was fine and normal all the way up until the point of delivery, and people did not listen to her. My mom actually, as a 15-year-old, labored for 2 days, and then they finally gave her a cesarean, only to find out that the cord had been wrapped around the baby's neck. If she had lived, my sister, she would have had severe cerebral palsy, but she didn't make it. She only lived a couple days. My mother never got to hold her baby or see her baby. Her baby was whisked away. My grandmother saw the baby, but my mom never held or saw her first baby. So when I hear stories in that vein, even today, I say this cannot be. I am that this shall end, right? Like, nobody deserves that. And I actually talked about that with my mother later in life. These terrible birth experiences, they stay with women. Like, they stay with them. Mm-hmm. It's very traumatizing. And the insult to the injury is to then be disregarded, treated as insignificant, ignored by the healthcare professionals who are supposed to be ensuring you and your baby's safety and health. So I think this is stuff that we can take on, and I think it's why, and I always tell people, we can't program our way out of a lot of our problems, but these programs are also vitally important. So it's a both and. We need real policy around this stuff. And I love what Dr. Knighton was talking about yesterday, which she said it's important that you document
everything.
And the goal is not to, document and then get things straight later. But without the documentation, there's not even an opportunity oftentimes to get things straight. Absolutely. So she's right on the money. That's vitally important. And now we need to be proactive. I'm actually taking
I've got 10 seconds.
Data. I'll just say that. We have good data that can point us in healthcare settings to problem practices and problem providers. So we also need to be harnessing the power of data and bringing a scalpel to this problem and getting the bad ones out and making way for a new era and a new generation of healthcare providers.
Back in just a minute. Thank you, Dr. Deb. Are you going to have to leave us now?
Very soon, yes. And look,
Okay.
I had to get room service, so I got to get out of here. And the guy knocked on the door. I'm mid-sentence. And he's like, yeah, sign the paper. I'm like, can you hear me talking, brother? Can you just wait a second? Can you just wait 1 second?
Look, you got this.
Oh, the multitask. I can't talk and listen to you at the same time, brother.
Oh, don't worry about it. But this is what we're going to do. Miss Lankford, how are you?
Here.
Miss Lankford, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's wonderful. Wonderful hearing your voice this morning. Just so honored that you would join us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, can't wait to have you back already. So everybody call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about your experiences in healthcare, particularly women. And I promise you, men, we're going to get to you too, because it seems to me that the higher you climb up the food chain, if you will, economically, the better the healthcare is. I mean, when you go up to the Mayo Clinic, it doesn't even feel like a hospital. Much of the Mayo Clinic system literally is underground. You never have to come outside. You can go from hospital to hospital. And the hospital itself doesn't feel like a hospital. There's carpeting. It doesn't smell like a hospital. I mean, it's just a whole different level of care. And of course, you hear helicopters coming in every 5 minutes, Dr. Verholden, Dr. Knighton, Nurse Langdon, because people are being brought in by their helicopters. But it's just to see how it's not even a bifurcated, two levels of care. There's care for the so-called best of us, and there's care for the rest of us, if you will. And that has got to change.
You right. I was going to say, too, and it depends, honestly, where you live at. Because a lot of the times, like, if you don't tell, like, let's say if I go into a facility and I don't mention my credentials and I don't mention my background.
Wait a minute, let me not forget about Cleveland Clinic.
Like every other
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, and let me say this. That is so true. This is saying that is so true for everybody but Black women.
Mm-hmm.
What we do know about maternal mortality is that if you're over 30 with a bachelor's degree, you're actually 6 times more likely to die in childbirth and due to childbirth complications.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Well, hold on.
Professional and Black.
No, we're on Facebook Live, but I want you to repeat that when we get on the other side of the break, okay? But no, keep talking about that. I mean, why is that?
And we think it's because Black women, professional Black women, are closer to the source of racism, right? Professional Black women attend predominantly white institutions every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're forced to work under microaggressions and macroaggressions every day. And we're so conscious of being, quote unquote, labeled as the angry Black woman that when we attend these doctor's appointments and we know something is wrong with us, we're very careful in how we express that to doctors and to midwives and to nurse practitioners. And we're not forceful, and we're not saying, yes, there's something wrong with me, and I need you to look at it more closely. And so what happens is we go into our professional work mode, and we're trying to advocate for ourselves, but
30 seconds.
To not be labeled.
Oh, I get it, but you know what?
Is,
you better keep your negritude with you, if you will. Don't play with people.
I agree.
I'm very serious. Do not play with people when you're not feeling well, when something is wrong. See, because we get into the so-called white spaces and we start conforming, and it kills you.
Right.
Let that go.
Right.
No.
Right.
I can't out-white a white person. You can't out-black me. How about that?
You can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're having a real conversation today about our health. Why is it that when we get into this system, when Black women get into this healthcare system, and Indigenous women, because no one really advocates for them as loudly as they need to be advocated for, brown women, why is it that we die so at such a rapid clip, particularly around when we're trying to have children. But it doesn't stop there, everybody. It does not stop there. I mean, because look, white women are dying in the United States trying to have children, just dying. And something's not happening here, but they are doing something really exciting in Cleveland. Dr. Furholden, Dr. Knighton brought this to my attention, and I'm so glad that she did. She saw our beloved Nina Turner there at the Village of Healing Center. Dr. Knighton, the Village of Healing Center, talk to us.
So I'm excited for her to tell you, but I can give you my personal experience just walking in. So I was actually invited by a friend and had no clue about what was going on. But when I started to do my work on it, I said, wow, this is something that's particularly going to address the needs, the prenatal needs, the maternal needs, the gynecological needs of Black women. And so I will tell you, walking into the clinic and being able to see, all Black women staff, right, and leadership, and then walking down the halls and being able to see the Black artwork, right, and then every room being named after some women in history, like the Black maternal mothers of, gynecology.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you're looking at all of these things, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And you know how you giving a finger snap? Like, yes, sisters, yes. I'm talking about the whole time you went into the room, Santita, and it was bright. It was vibrant. It was, you had statistics there just, reaffirming to women, we know that your messages are not heard, So I'm just telling you, I was so full of excitement, so full of joy, so full of just overwhelming emotion. And then to hear these women talk about, the retaliation faced in workplaces, as being a Black nurse and having experienced that for speaking up for a patient, right, or telling them something that needs to change and that leads to your schedules being changed or altered, right, or you're not getting the days off or getting written up for something. So it was like, I'm just like, yes, like that's me too. Like,
Absolutely.
So I was just listening to all of that. But then even too, like the fact, just as she mentioned, I think about the fact that I was educated but still didn't know anything when it came to childbirth and when it came to, I had a good midwife, so I at least knew to get a midwife. But it was still a bad experience when it came down to the delivery and the postpartum portion of my care in the hospital. And so that was something that I was like, wow, this is just not a poor Black woman thing, or let's say a white poor woman thing. This is like an all women thing. Mm-hmm. But more particularly, I thought about the fact that those cultural differences stopped me from speaking up for myself and being able to advocate in a way to where I was letting people hear me. And I was even accused, like I told you yesterday in our guest, of drug seeking, because after a cesarean, the epidural needle had came out of my back when they transferred me to the other bed. Mm. And it wasn't until the next morning that the anesthesiologist came in, and it was a puddle of fluid laying up under me. Oh. But they got to the point where they stopped checking on me throughout the night. So I laid there with my cut, okay, a fresh cut, and pain all night. And this is, again, at a prominent hospital. So it just really resonated with me. And so that's why I just thought that it was very important, to bring our guest on today to just talk about the wonderful work that they're doing.
Well, we're so excited to have Dana Lankford. She's a certified nurse and midwife, and she's the CEO of the Village of Healing Center in Cleveland. And as I was reading about you, I was so excited. These three enslaved Black women, said Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, who were operated on without anesthesia, everybody. And then the doctor, who was the so-called father of gynecology, would then operate on white women with anesthesia. Thank you for acknowledging our ancestors in that way. God bless those women. God bless those women. God bless those women. The Village of Healing Center, what do you do?
So the Village of Healing Center is focused on Black providers taking care of Black patients. I think you said something very, very important in the segment before, and that is the hospital systems in general are created in racism. From the very beginning, they were created in racism. We know that obstetrics and gynecology was created in racism. You just talked about Dr. Marion Sims and those 3 enslaved Black women that were forced to endure over 30 procedures each, completely unmedicated, completely with no consent, in front of several white men watching them. These procedures were perfected on them first, and then taken to up north to white women and done with them with anesthesia at that time. And so this is where we started with gynecology. And so when we hear the stories, like the story of I was forced to lay in the bed from my C-section with no anesthesia, and these stories are not, they're very common. These stories happen more often than not. Whenever we sit in meetings, whenever we talk about the Village of Healing Center, there's always at least one Black woman in the room who can relate to why we started our center. So we started our center because the City Lab had just come out with their study to say that Cleveland, Ohio was the worst place to live if you were a Black woman, and that included healthcare. And we have 3 of the largest hospital systems in the country in our city. And then Enlightened Solutions followed up with a Project Noir study where they interviewed 450 Black women. And there were a lot of numbers that come out of that, but 70% of those Black women said they had at least been told once that their symptoms were made up. And then our experience of working in predominantly white institutions trying to advocate for patients in fear of retaliation from the system and things like that, we knew that something needed to be done. So instead of continuing to try to change the system, we opted to create our own system. And so the research had all said that when you have a provider that looks like you, your disparity decreases, your outcome is better, and your satisfaction decreases. And so we knew that everybody needs to follow the evidence. And so we created the Village of Healing Center with the intent to follow that evidence to provide Black providers for Black patients. The latest study says that when I'm a Black provider taking care of a Black infant, that infant mortality rate decreases by 1/3. So
Wait. What? By 1/3?
Yes, by 1/3. That baby's infant mortality rate decreases. And I'm not sure of the rates in Chicago, but in Cleveland, Ohio, being a Black infant, you have 7 times more likely to die from infant mortality than a white infant. And so the decrease by 1/3 just because my mother is being taken care of by a Black provider, that's powerful. And that is what we need to be following and making sure happens. And so we decided that this was the route to go. So we created the Village of Healing Center. And we created it with Black women in mind. And like she said, when you walk up the hallways, there's nothing but Black art on the walls. The clinic is yellow and red. So when you walk in, you're not surrounded by white walls. You don't feel like I don't belong here. But the goal is culturally sensitive care for all Black women.
Everybody, I want to know what your experience has been and how important that is to you. And I want our white sisters to call in as well, and let us know what your experiences are, because a lot of people have a lot of different kinds of experiences, and I think it's important that we share. Any woman who is mistreated in the system, it shows that all women are endangered within the system. Lisa has said, thank you for saying there's a great show today. You said, but you lost your twin girls prematurely when you were 17 years of age. God bless you. And you were treated horribly, you write, by the attending physician. Thank God she had 5 more healthy children. God bless you. And you're very welcome for this show. I mean, this is for you. I mean, I wish you would call in, Lisa, but I'm going to make a few presumptions here. Maybe, and hopefully I don't offend you, because that is not what I seek to do. And I say this as the product of teenage mothers. My great grandmother, paternally, my father's grandmother, my father and mother's parents, they were all teenage mothers. They had children. They started their families very early in life. My mother's mother was orphaned, and I think she had her first child at 14. And then my mother, had me at 19. She was married and in college. Do you think that, Nurse Lankford, that age plays a role? Is it age? Is it Is it your financial position, social position, race? Is it all of these things to create a perfect storm that really are literally killing our children and our mothers and our women?
So what the studies have all pointed to is race.
Mm-hmm.
They have done the studies to look at obesity, to look at income, to look at educational level. And like I said before, the CDC actually came out with their study to show that if you are over the age of 30, Black with at least a bachelor's degree, you're actually 6 times more likely to die due to childbirth and childbirthing complications.
Why is that?
So what we know, and that's what we think is the reason, is because Black professional women are closer to the source of racism. Black professional women attend predominantly white institutions every single day, and they deal with that trauma, they deal with that toxicity, and that causes weathering in Black people's bodies, and especially professional Black women. Also, what we know is that professional Black women tend to fear more of the term angry Black woman, because that's what we get labeled at work all day, every day. And so when we're trying to advocate for ourselves, there's a way that we go about doing it, and we're trying to be so polite, and we're trying not to offend, and we're trying not to come across as quote unquote the angry Black woman, that we tend to not truly advocate for ourselves like we think we should. And so what we know is that it has nothing to do with all of those factors, but race is the number one factor. And actually, myself with a master's degree, I'm more likely to lose my baby from infant mortality than a white woman in the eighth grade. So we know that none of those factors play into it. And I think a lot of times it's way easier for people to say, oh, it's poor, it's Black, it's, lower socioeconomic status, because it's easier to victim blame. But that's not the case. What we know is that simply being a Black woman puts you at increased risk.
Call me, everybody. What do you think? 773-763-9278. Lisa followed up her first comment about losing her 2 babies at 17. She said this: she was in such pain while she was having her children, who she lost, these twins. She said, I was in such pain while the doctor was scraping out my uterus. He said to me, lay down and be still, you animal. How? That doesn't sound, that's crazy to me, but it sounds believable. But you know what? You have to have people, Dr. Verholden, Dr. Knighton, and Nurse Lankford, who will believe you.
Yes. Yes.
And look, and what's so crazy is my husband was there, and he heard them say, will somebody shut her up before they put me under? Because it's like at that point I was a nurse and I knew too much. So I was looking over at my vitals and I was watching them drop and was asking questions, and nobody was talking back directly to me. So I do believe her when she said something like that. But it's unfortunate because you end up having willful blindness in these locations where you have, let's say, coworkers or you have advocates, that are there and they see what's going on, but they tend to ignore the situations as if they're not happening.
So how do you find women are reluctant to come to the clinic, or are they sheepishly coming to the clinic, or are they running to the clinic, or is it a combination of all three?
So we just opened up our doors on Monday. That was our first day open. But since we've opened, the buzz around us has been phenomenal. People are calling. They are wanting to get in. And actually, some of the providers at the hospital systems have reached out to ask how they can refer their patients to us. So the pouring of outcome, the pouring of support has been amazing, I think, especially with day 3. And our schedule is booking up next week already. So people are running because they know everyone's experience is similar. Everyone, no matter your income, no matter, your socioeconomic status, nothing, every Black woman's experience is similar. And I think that they all recognize that the chances of survival and thriving are way better if I go to a Black clinic, or if I go to a clinic that focuses on Black women, than if I enter this large hospital system that for years has had these increased racial disparities.
Well, I think of Dr. Susan Moore, who died, at the height of the pandemic, that they say is now dwindling. Okay, she of course was in Indiana, and fortunately she put herself on Facebook because the doctors, number one, wouldn't believe that she was a physician. I mean, this is just crazy. But because she understood, what was happening in her body, and she got the lingo, they finally believed her. They finally believed her. But they wouldn't give her the treatment that she needed. They would not give her any medicines to ease her pain, and she died. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And this happens over and over and over again. And it's not a class problem, everybody. It's a caste problem. Because no matter how much money you make or where you went to school, blah, 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 what club you are in, sorority, as Black women, we all go through the same thing. And guess what? Indigenous women go through the same thing. And our Latina brothers, sisters go through the same thing. Everybody goes through the same thing. And poor white women go through that too. All you have to do is just go to poor white communities and you will see it. But it's for some, but it is race. And we can't get around that. We cannot get around that. And it's gender. I think that because Nurse Lankford, we have, oh goodness, racism is such, it's such a burden. Racism is such a burden that we don't look at how gender. But gender is also at play too, because women are just not taken seriously.
Yes, it's the intersectionality of being Black and a woman, right? It's the intersectionality of both that creates these issues and these problems that lead to literally life or death for us.
So what are you going to be going into the community to tell people, hey, I have a clinic, I have a place where you can come? And what about people who don't have private insurance? How do you handle that?
So yes, we are in the community. We are for all Black women to come. We have had some news stories that have come on. So we are in the process of really promoting and getting the word out. Not only do we accept private insurances, but we also accept your Medicaid and your Medicares. And then for women that don't have insurance, we do have a self-pay option and a membership option. So we are here for everyone, for all Black women. We are here for you despite your ability to pay. We want to make sure one of our ultimate goals as a Village of Healing Center is to not only make sure that Black women are surviving, but we're thriving.
I don't live in Cleveland, but boy, oh boy, I think we all need this. Is there like a template? Like, are y'all gonna do a rollout all across the country? Because we need this.
We definitely would love to. We got to get through this first couple months here, but we definitely would love to. And actually in Cleveland, what we are doing is we recognize that it's not just obstetrics and gynecology where Black people face this racism in healthcare. So we are rolling out a network of clinics throughout Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, Ohio. And it will include primary care, pediatrics, dentistry, and mental health. Because in all of those specialties, we see that racial disparities are there, and racial disparities exist, and especially in pediatrics and mental health. The statistics are just astounding when it comes to being Black in healthcare.
Dr. Knighton, I can't thank you enough for bringing Nurse Lankford and this Village of Healing Center to us today. Thank you for that sensitivity. Thank you for that sensibility. What do you want us to know in these last couple of minutes we have here?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, Santita, and you talked about it yesterday, and that's the fact that the sensitivity and of I would say nurse practitioners as providers. And again, this is not bashing my physician colleagues, but I'm just going to encourage people that if they do not have a provider do not automatically shun out nurse practitioners because they are not a physician. I will tell you that having a nurse practitioner as a primary care, you are provided some of the most sensitive care. You are likely to have a woman nurse practitioner who will then be able to not only hear all of your needs, but be able to compassionately address those needs as well as advocate for you. I say that from personal experience. I also say that because I know for sure that this is the case amongst our nurse practitioner colleagues versus our physician colleagues. So that is one of the main things that I would say. I would also say, too, just to our audience, that it's not even necessarily always a matter of black and white. It's about that understanding of cultures. And we know that in Western medicine, you know, things were not necessarily tailored or meant for black people to receive care. And historically, we know that notion of black people being guinea pigs. And so for us to still be where we are right now in 2022, still having to dismantle the symptoms of racism, whether that is institutional, whether that is, you know, in our day-to-day walks of life, we must also understand that that means centering care that was never centered around certain populations in order to make sure that we can start to decrease some of the disparities that exist. We see, you know, the disparities, and we heard, you know, Pastor Tish Dixon say COVID is a snitch. So COVID didn't necessarily cause the problems, but it does tend to precipitate what it is going on around us right now, when it's not only just talking about, you know, disparities with high blood pressure, diabetes, but just as, you know, we've heard, you know, our midwife discuss today when we're talking about maternal and infant deaths and, you know, underserved care. And even, too, you know, the fact that I do want to acknowledge Santita that she's doing it in what's been deemed as one of the most stressed out cities, financially, health, family, all of the above, which is Cleveland, Ohio, which is also one of the poorest, largest cities. And so when we recognize that these are issues that continue to exist, we know that they're trying to, let's say, eliminate race as being an actual contextual factor, but it does not change the socioeconomic as well as the racial burden placed on people in these issues. And so I do hope, you know, that people continue to recognize it and understand that these things are essential in order for us to be able to give best patient-centered care that we possibly can.
Well, you know, just very quickly, I've got less than a minute here. Nurse Dana Lankford, CEO of the Village of Healing Center in Cleveland. They're going to be opening them out throughout the county of Cuyahoga in Cleveland. Let me ask you this. Have you all considered like a telemedicine option so we can get in touch with you from all across the country?
Yes, we are doing a telemedicine option. Anyone can call 216-815-HEAL, HEAL. So that's 815-4325. And yes, we are doing a telemedicine option.
Okay, and so it says 216-815-HEAL.
Yes.
Okay, you know what? Because, you know, my girl, I've got a lot of dear friends there in Cleveland. Of course, Senator Nina Turner, but the Bustamantes and the Tidmores and Reverend, oh my goodness, Reverend Otis Moss and so many people. I mean, I want to get the word out across the country in the best way that I can, because if we can do telemedicine, that would be such a great thing. That would be such a great thing. Yeah. And let people know, because, you know, we can be healthy, everybody. We really, really can. We can. And there's some people who care, and there's some people who know. And thank you, Dr. Shanina Knighton, for telling us, don't go past these nurses. If you have ever been hospitalized, you see how important the nurse is. The nurse is the person that the physician goes to find out how you're doing. The nurse leads the physician in your care. Don't ever forget that. Ooh, let's talk about Ahmaud Arbery, everybody. You know, this jury's not been sequestered. There's so much in this case. And then the George Floyd case, that we have the other police officers who watched George Floyd get choked to death. They're on trial. And then we have the black FedEx driver who was chased and shot at by a white father and son. What's going on? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Nurse Lankford, I want you to come back to the show. We need to tease this out because I'm so glad that you gave me this number, because we need to spread the word about, telemedicine. Because
Yes.
there was a doctor that people started going to if they heard about her, because how so many Black women have fibroids. And the
Yes.
first thing they wanted to do was
Yes.
give us hysterectomies. There was a physician in Detroit who would not do that, you know. And
Yes.
it's important for us to get the word out about people who understand our particular situation so we can get our lives saved.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Oh boy, you blessed me and everybody here today because people are now
Thank you so
sharing.
much.
Oh no, thank you. We are in your debt. I'm in your debt. And I want to
Thank
have
you
you
so
back on.
much.
I'd love to have you, Dr. Knighton. We've got to bring her back on more and more because we need to let people know about telehealth, how they can consult with a healthcare professional via Zoom or just you can be seen. You can be seen, and you will be seen, and you will be seen. What about women who are on Medicare or Medicaid? You do you can
Yes,
work with. Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
Yes, absolutely. We accept all insurances. Right now, it's CareSource, Medicare, and Anthem. And that's just simply because that's how the credentialing is coming through, but we've applied to all of them.
Okay.
And then, like I said, for women that don't have insurance, we have a self-pay and a membership option.
Okay. Because everybody doesn't have insurance. And that does not mean
Yeah,
that you don't
exactly.
deserve health care. It just means you don't have insurance.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean anything.
Absolutely.
A lot of people not going back to
Mm-hmm.
these jobs so they can be mistreated and underpaid. So there's a lot going on. You have a lot of oh, come on. You have a lot of Uber drivers. You have a lot
Oh,
of people who are
yeah.
gigging. So, and then you have a lot of people who are underinsured. It's not like your insurance pays up to 80%. You need you need
Right.
additional insurance to pay for
Look, it's worse
yours.
now.
Oh,
And look, and
please.
that don't matter regardless of status, okay? Look,
Mm-mm.
that 80/20 will put us all back in that same poverty line, I tell you.
I promise you before the Lord it will. When you get one of these 5-digit bills, and I've had it happen to me, you're like, oh my gosh, give me the
On top of
vapors.
the insurance payment, on top of the insurance payment, Santita.
Oh, girl, come on, don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started. So, there are a lot of things that we really, really need to be talking about. And I would love to have you come back, Nurse Langford, um, to talk about that. And, because one of my concerns, in addition to Black women, is what's happening on these reservations where our indigenous brothers and sisters are living. I mean, you talk about an
Yeah.
underserved community, and you have not seen poverty until you go there to many of
Right.
these
You're right.
reservations. And we have got to be concerned. Yes, I'm saying it about everybody. Should we take care of ourselves? Absolutely. But I don't think that God gives us this kind of blessing, with this kind of genius that Nurse Langford has, and the compassion to keep it to ourselves. That's what we're supposed to do. If you're gonna live right, the way your grandmama and great grandmama and mama taught you to do, you're supposed to be kind to everybody. And we have got to do a reset on how we care for our health.
Okay, I have Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Fancher, and Mr. McKee
Yeah.
on the line. Would you like me to put them through?
Yes, but you know what, Nurse Langford, before I let you go, I want you to meet, in particular, we're bringing these three people on, Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, Attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, but Attorney C.K. Hoffler is the immediate past president of the National Bar Association, which is the oldest and largest Black bar association in the world, more than 66,000 lawyers. And CK, this lady has been brought to us by Dr. Shanina Knighton. She is the CEO of the Village of Healing Center in Cleveland, and it specifically cares for Black women. Just given that our maternal mortality is so high, and all of us everybody can talk about experiences that we've had in the medical establishment that have been negative. No matter how much money you make, where you went to school, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't surprise anybody. And so they actually have a telehealth option. And I just want to find a way to work with Nurse Lankford to try and spread the word about what they're doing. This Village of Healing Center, the Village of Healing Center, it's culturally sensitive healthcare for us.
Wonderful. Well, I think, first of all, it's wonderful. I didn't know. I was aware that there were centers that try to address some of the issues that we face as Black women, where people simply don't take our pain seriously. When we go to the emergency room or when we go to the hospital, I've seen many cases like this. Santita, we've discussed it on your show before. And I know that there were centers that were emerging to try to address that. So I'm delighted to hear that there's a center out of Cleveland where they have telemedicine, where they can provide help.
1 minute.
Women, all women, but particularly women of color who experience our pain not being taken seriously. And cases that I've looked at, that lack of seriousness has resulted in death.
Absolutely.
And
Look, let me tell you something. When we go to Washington, D.C., we go to Howard University Hospital. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and they've got some great hospitals in Washington. But I know when I go to Howard, I'm going to be taken care of. I know that.
30 seconds.
Right.
They even have food
So
in the cafeteria I like, prepared healthfully.
I'm about to say, look, that sounds biased, Santita. Look, is it the care or is it because that's your alma mater?
Well, you know what? Let me tell you something. Yes. Green prepared with they're soulful and they're healthful. How about that? Thank you.
10 seconds.
And yes, we did go over there and get our food when we were in school. Just be quiet, Shanina. I'm about to put her on mute.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, picking up the reins from Air America. That's what we were, but what we are today is WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet the Santita Jackson Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please get on over there, everybody, or meet me on my official Santita Jackson Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's the page you need to go to, everybody. That's the page you need to go to, Santita Jackson and Friends. We're going to be talking about Ahmaud Arbery, and so many other cases are kind of floating around. We've got George Floyd, the other officers who watched him choke to death. They are on trial. We've got this young Black FedEx driver who was just trying to do his job, but a white father and son chased him, shooting him. What is going on, everybody? Well, we're going to talk about it here. Of course, the legal Q&A with CK. She's got to run and take care of a case today, but we've got attorney Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee helping us to look at this legally and socially, sociologically. We're going to break it down, and we want to hear from you, everybody. And Arlene, you are more than welcome for speaking up for the indigenous community. And I want to thank a young woman who wrote to me last week before I get into these headlines. She's one of our Latino sisters. And she said, she chastised me. She said, I need to hear more about me. I need to hear more about Mexican Americans. I need to hear more about the Latino community. And I pledge to you, you will hear more. I've reached out, but I will reach out even more because this show belongs to everybody. And I hope that you understand that. Charge any omission that you might hear or feel. And that includes our white brothers and sisters. Charge it to my head, not to my heart. Please, please. But what I do try to do on this show is give voice to people who are unvoiced. So many of us do not have a voice. We don't have a voice. Black women are not heard in this society. Indigenous women are not heard in this society. Hispanic women are not heard in this society. And unlike anybody else, Black women can never be white, ever. So let's be clear on that. Black men can never be white. We don't have that option. Everybody else has got that option. So work with me. Let's work together. I love you all, everybody. Call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's get things rolling. Chicago, it will be positively balmy today. It will feel like spring, 51 degrees above zero, showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 24 degrees above zero. It's kind of cold up there, Minneapolis. It'll be cloudy. The Dow closed up 422 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 348 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 69 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves were triumphant over the Hornets, 126-120, and the Kings will be playing the Bulls in Chicago tonight, and the Raptors will be facing off against the Timberwolves, and the Wild will be playing the Jets in the NHL. Everybody, are you following the Olympics? Well, last week, the United States was 12th in medal rankings. Now this week we're number 3 behind Norway, who they're number 1, and Germany, and behind the United States, Austria. Wonderful. But there is a wonderful feel-good story. The first black woman to get a speed skating gold medal. Erin Jackson, she almost missed this opportunity, 29 years of age, number 1 in the 500-meter event. She slipped and fell during the Olympic trials. But her teammate, Brittany Bow, who came in first, gave up her spot in that event so that Jackson could compete. She said, you know what, she deserves it. She's been the best at it. And given that opportunity, provided by her teammate, her white teammate, she made history, and we thank God for Brittany and Erin and their sisterhood, everybody. The Moderna CEO says it's reasonable to think the pandemic may be in its final stages. What do you think about that, everybody? We might be at the end of this thing. What do you think? And what about Ukraine? President Joe Biden made a plea for diplomacy in a speech that he said he was making directly to the Russian people yesterday. And he waits to see if Russian President Vladimir Putin will order an invasion of Ukraine. Biden warned that Russia should expect an overwhelming international condemnation and other repercussions if they proceed. Earlier in the day, Putin said Russia, though, was pulling back some of its military units. But Western officials said they'd seen no evidence and that any partial withdrawal had begun. Well, we'll have to see what is going to get people convinced, but let's hope we don't have to go to war. Scientists have given us some really great news as we pivot. Scientists have possibly cured HIV in a woman for the first time. An American research team reported that it has possibly cured HIV in a woman for the first time. Their patients stepped into a rarefied club that includes 3 men whom scientists have cured or very likely cured of HIV. Let's hope that they'll continue to build on that success because we want to wipe out AIDS and HIV forever and ever more. Amen. Do you want to buy a home? Do you think that a home is out of your reach? Well, Team Hochberg is here to let you know that that is not true. If you don't have good credit, if you need to repair your credit, if you don't have any credit, if you've had a bankruptcy, if you've got mounting credit card bills, call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com, 56david.com, and they will help you to move toward home ownership or to save your home. If you're purchasing your home, if you're refinancing an existing loan, if you need to secure a VA loan, if you need a reverse mortgage, all of that and more they can help you do. Pete recently posted a 5-star Google review, and they helped him to save almost $10,000 a year, $800 a month. Over $800 a month he's been able to save because he went to Team Hochberg and they helped him. He felt that it sounded too good to be true, but he's following hundreds of WCPT listeners to Team Hochberg so that he could get his home saved, everybody. Over 200 5-star reviews. Reach out to Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com. All you have to do, they can give you a free consultation. They can help you to figure it out. They can work it out. Everybody, let's talk about the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Now, we just got through the state trial. Of course, legal Q&A with CK, and I know you've got to run today, but, you've got a great team. We've got attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, and, of course, Dwight McKee, who can help us to understand this sociologically and socially. Please help us to understand the state case, the federal case? What is the difference?
Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to everyone in this wonderful panel. The biggest difference between the state and the federal case is because the underlying crimes are the same. Murder, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay.
But the difference in the federal case is it's a federal hate crime case. So it really is just the charges, the statute. So remember, in the state case, what we saw was the prosecutor proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the 3 defendants were guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. So that's what we saw in the state case. In the federal case, however, they also have to prove in some respects the elements of murder, which would be fairly easy because it has been proven in the state case. But to win that case, they have to prove that the murder was motivated by, in this case, racial animus or some type of bias. And the bias, of course, is racial animus. We know that there was a lot of evidence, and there is a lot of evidence that's coming out, that this crime was motivated by the fact that Ahmaud Arbery was black, a black man running in a neighborhood where people felt he should not be. And that's what led to his murder. So the evidence that's being laid, yes, focuses on the murder. So we will see the video. We have seen the video again. We have seen Ahmaud Arbery's family react as we expect they would. And they're going to continue to react when seeing the video. But that's what has to be used to bring out the racial animus. What happened at the scene, how they were treated differently than they would have been treated otherwise, the racially insensitive comments that were made, the license plate that has a Confederate flag, all of the things that we did not see in the state case that point to race, we will see in the federal case, because the state case did not focus on race. The prosecutor said in one sentence in closing, we know this happened to Ahmaud Arbery because he was black. And that was it. Because what they were focused on was proving the elements of murder and all of the other claims that were filed against the defendant. So that's a difference. Now, there's a big difference in how a state court case proceeds and a federal case proceeds. In a federal case, the judge basically picks the jury. How does that happen? Well, both sides will submit questions to the judge, and some judges do allow the lawyers to ask some questions, limited questions. But the judge conducts primarily voir dire in federal cases. That's the biggest distinction. And also the rules are different. It's more, federal court is more rigid, more restricted. There's more formality to it. But basically, you can get justice in federal court like state court. Here we have federal prosecutors, the Justice Department. In the state court case, we had state prosecutors. That's the difference between the two. The underlying crimes are the same. It's just what motivated that crime. What was that crime based on? And we know that's based on racial animus. We know that, and Stevie Wonder could see that, but proving it, Santita, is a completely different thing. And this jury is going to be charged with a pretty high standard. They're going to have to put together the pieces. The prosecution is going to have to give them all the evidence so that they can conclude that, yes, indeed, this crime was based on racial animus or racial bias.
Well, why has the jury been sequestered in this case and not the state case? I mean, is that just purely judicial discretion, or what happened here?
It is judicial discretion. I personally thought that the jury should have been sequestered in the state case, but the outcome was great, so I'm not going to complain, and I defer to the judge on that. But in a case like this, where there's already been one trial that the world has seen, not just a few people, but the world has seen, has focused on legal commentary over and over and over. Everybody knows something about this case in that community. I think there may have been one juror who said something about he wasn't aware. I'm not sure if he ever watches TV, listens to the news, or goes out the house. You know, we're in COVID, so some people are isolated. But, you know, I can see why the judge sequestered the jury, because they are more susceptible to outside influences. I thought, again, it should have happened in the state case, but definitely in this case where there's already been a trial, to ensure the integrity of the process.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are. Let me ask you this, Attorney Mark Fancher. A hate crime, what is that, and is it important that be proved here? Or does it need to be proved?
Well, a hate crime, you know, this is, I believe, being brought under Section 249 of Title 18 of the United States Code, which says that it's whoever, whether or not acting under a color of law, willfully causes bodily injury to any person or through the use of firearm or dangerous weapon or an explosive or incendiary device attempts to cause bodily injury to any person because of the actual or perceived race, color, religion, or national origin of any person. So that's what qualifies a crime as a hate crime. But the statute or the law also gives a clue as to why this would be important to bring, because these cases cannot be brought unless there's been a certification, or in other words, that the Attorney General has signed off on it. And one of the reasons that they give for bringing a case like this is that the verdict or the sentence obtained pursuant to state charges left demonstratively unvindicated the federal interest in eradicating bias-motivated violence. So in a case like this where, yes, you did get a conviction, for, the homicide that took place, there's still the belief by the Justice Department that that's not enough in terms of sending a message to the public about what went on here. That, yes, we got the conviction for murder, but if you, in addition to killing someone, do it because you're motivated by racial animus, we're going to turn the knife. We want to send a special message to the world that it's bad enough that you kill somebody, but if you do it because you're racially motivated, not only are you going to get the punishment for murder, but we're going to punish you for being racist.
So where do you see this case going? I mean, do you see it? Do you see a similar outcome, or will there have to be a completely different approach by the lawyers in this case?
Well, this is where I've become a little bit cynical. Well, I'm generally cynical anyway, but
no, you're not.
Here.
You're historical.
Okay, or hysterical, depending upon the day.
There's that.
but we talked not long ago about federal prosecutions under a different section of this title, Section 242. Where Tamir Rice, the Justice Department made a decision not to bring federal civil rights criminal charges in Tamir Rice's case. And we talked about the fact, and that's a different kind of a crime. It's not the hate crimes section of the federal law. But we talked about the fact that there are any number of egregious killings and other serious crimes that, at least in my view, warrant criminal civil rights prosecutions by the Justice Department where they don't do it. I mean, awful cases where they decide not to do it. And my theory has been, and it is just a theory, that the Justice Department has a limited budget for prosecutions, and they don't prosecute unless there are political points to be made with the prosecution, or they feel very, very pressured by the world to actually bring the case and to show that they are doing what the people are demanding. So you had federal criminal civil rights charges brought in the Rodney King case in the wake of an urban insurrection that almost burned down, Southern California. But you don't have it when there's a little unknown homeless black man who's gunned down firing squad style in a vacant parking lot in Saginaw, Michigan, in full view of the cameras. Because who cares? Nobody's pressuring us to do this. And if we succeed, then, there are no political points to be made here. I think that in this case, they have made a calculation that this is a slam dunk of a case. Nothing in law is ever a slam dunk. Let me hasten to say that. But as much as it can be, I think that they can win this. They're very confident that they can. and they've got a conviction in the state court for the murder. They've got, from what they report, all kinds of evidence of racial expletives being used all over the place by these defendants all the time. So they think that they can win this. So not only do they think they can win it, but they can win all kinds of political points by doing this, because everybody, wants the heads of these defendants. So I think that's what's going on.
Well, I mean, politics is always a factor, right? Politics is always a factor. It's always a factor. I mean, politics helped us to, number one, find out about this case in the first place. CK, in these last couple of minutes before you go, what should we be looking for? Because I remember at the beginning of this whole process, you wanted us to look at the composition of the jury. And of course, the jury now is much more diverse. It's 8 white people, 3 black people, 1 Latino. What should we be looking for? And should we be following this trial too?
We should be following this case very closely. I don't believe it's a slam dunk. I slightly disagree with my colleague, because, as he said, there's no case that's a slam dunk. But also, people may feel, jurors could feel, and there's already been justice. It was one case, they're going to jail for life, and some people might feel this is overkill, and they've got to really, people may be more willing to convict murder when the evidence is really strong, but they may not be willing to go so far as to convict based on racial animus, based on racism. These are dirty words for some people. And so the reason why I say it's not a slam dunk, I think we have to look and see whether the jury is willing to go that far. They should go that far. There's enough evidence for them to go that far. But remember, we're in a divided country. And a lot of people, even if our country weren't divided, don't really believe that racism exists in the way that perhaps I may feel it exists. So I think we want to watch this case. It's important for this case to be tried. People have to understand the difference between a hate crime and just criminal activity.
Well, what's the difference?
There is a big distinction. Well, the difference is someone's killing you because you're black. That's what the motivation is, versus just killing you. When that motivation, and by the way, Santita, when people were lynched during slavery and up until present time, it was because of the color of their skin. It was because of an orientation. It was because of their gender. All of these things, these cases are few and far between. We don't see them prosecuted often. And this country and the world needs to understand what hate crimes mean. We don't have a George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We don't have criminal justice reform right now. But what we do have is a case that will illustrate the racial disparities and how people are motivated to kill based on race. Even though we know it happens every single day, this case illustrates it. And it illustrates it with strong evidence. So let's see what a jury will say, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think we have to watch this case very closely, watch the evidence. The evidence is there for a strong conviction and a strong message. But I guess 35 years as a lawyer has shown me that there's no such thing as a slam dunk, and you never know what 12 jurors will feel on any given day and what the evidence will reflect and how compelling people will feel that it is. And that's why one of the disadvantages of federal court, you can't delve into people's backgrounds in the same way you can in state court. Taking this jury was done very quickly, but that's the way it happens in federal court. A federal judge is not going to take weeks and weeks and weeks unless there's a different type of case and the circumstances warrant it to pick a jury. Just not going to do it. A federal judge is going to put that jury in the box, ask the questions he or she needs to ask, and keep it going. And that's what happens. And so I think people's backgrounds, the way they feel about issues, delving into it with a great deal of specificity is very important in a case like this. But of course, if it's prosecuted under a federal statute, it doesn't happen. And just so people know, in Georgia, there was not, when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, there was no hate crime statute in Georgia. It is because of his murder that Georgia now has a state hate crime statute. And so because people were asking why couldn't it have been prosecuted in state court, because there was no such statute in Georgia until after he was murdered.
Unbelievable. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, thank you so much for being with us. Legal Q&A with C.K. every Wednesday. We're talking with attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and Dwight McKee. Cannot wait to hear what you have to say, Dwight McKee, because all of this is happening as we are looking at the trial, and we should be looking at the trial of the 3 other officers who sat there and watched George Floyd get choked to death. And then what about this black FedEx driver? Bless his heart, DeMontario Gibson, he was just trying to work. And this white father and son chased him, shooting him. What? Back in just a minute. CK, that was crazy.
Okay, we lost Mr. McKee. I'm going to call him back right now.
Okay, great.
Crazy.
Just
all is crazy, but let me just say this.
Yes.
We are living in crazy times from the standpoint of civil liberties, from the standpoint of criminal justice, and from the standpoint of equality and racism. And I think it's going to get crazier. So I am praying, and I just hate to see the family once again go through this emotion, but they need vindication. They need people to know this was based on race. They need them to know it wasn't based on anything else. It was just based on race. It means so much. And for me, I hate to say it, but I have black kids who have been victimized too, running through the neighborhood, walking through the neighborhood, just being black. It means something to me as well to see a prosecution. At least we got to try like the Dickens to get this done because the evidence is there. And I think the country needs to understand what hate crimes are so that people who are engaging in hate crimes may think twice. They may not, but they might just. And if it does stop and prevents one hate crime, then there would have been vindication, because that's how I look at a system. You know, if you can stop one murder, one murder, somebody's child not getting murdered, not being killed, not being lynched, not being brutalized, we should try to stop it.
Well, Mark?
Well, Santita, I do have to run.
Of course, but thank you.
And thank you, and I'm so sorry I have to run today, but I will stay tuned.
Do your thing. How about that?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Mark?
Okay,
yes.
Mr. McKee's phone's going straight to voicemail, so I don't know what happened there, but I'll keep trying.
Okay, let's find out. Let me see if I can reach him too. Oh, he just called me.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let me just see. It keeps going to voicemail. Hey. Should he call in?
Yeah, I'll pick it up right away, or if he wants, I could call him back. I don't know what the issue is, but he just dropped and I can't get a hold of him. So
I don't either. But I mean, because I wasn't able to reach him. But let me give him the call-in numbers. Well, no, those are clogged up, right? Okay, please call. Let me just tell him to call into the station. Just call in like a caller. Okay. Okay, are we still up?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, let me hear, because when I don't hear anything, I'm like, what is going on? Okay.
Smith, Hull House grew to serve several thousand of Chicago's working poor.
We've got just under a minute.
Okay.
Norwegian American Hospital is now Humble Park Health. We now offer state-of-the-art MRIs that provide consistent, high-resolution results every time. Call 888-HPH-MRI-1 to schedule your next MRI appointment. Humble Park Health, proud to serve all in our community. For more information, please visit hph.care.
Talking about all the people who woke up and got there late. Leave Facebook users and everybody else alone.
30 seconds.
Short of breath, just reading a book. I could have delayed telling my doctor, but I didn't wait.
They told their doctors and found out they have atrial fibrillation.
Oh, we have Mrs. Wells on the line, by the way, too.
Oh, okay. 5 times more likely to have a stroke. If you have one or more of these symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath.
I'll keep working on it. We got about 10 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Contact your doctor.
Brought to you by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Okay, he's ringing now.
WCPT 820.
Copy that.
Facts matter.
No, call right. He just hang up, and he's going to call you now. Thanks.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
peace of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case. We saw the state case, everybody. We saw the state case, but now we've got a federal case. And you're right, they have brought racism right into this particular case. Really, the allegations, the charges of racism. It turns out these three men who killed Ahmaud Arbery have a whole history of racism, of racist comments, of racist behaviors. And so got to talk about that. And then what about this FedEx driver? I just had to bring that in, Mark, because this young man, 24 years of age, just trying to work, have a nice job, get some benefits. He's chased and shot at in Mississippi by a white father and son. What is going on, everybody? And then we've got the George Floyd case. The other officers who watched George Floyd choke to death, they're on trial right now. There's a lot going on, but let's keep front and center the Ahmaud Arbery case. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars on my Santita Jackson Show YouTube page, Santita Jackson Show, and on my official Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's the official page, everybody. Please meet me and become my friend on Santita Jackson and Friends. Please, please, please. I've got so many, 1,000+ requests for friendships, but I can't bring you on to the Santita Jackson landing page. But if you go to Santita Jackson and Friends, boom, we are on fire. Hello, how you doing, Chaparral? You have got a big event coming in a couple of weeks, honoring your son, Courtney Copeland, the Courtney Copeland Foundation. Talk to us about it.
Yes, Santita. I am hosting our first charity ball for the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. This foundation was started on behalf of memory of my son, Courtney Copeland, who was killed March 4th, 2016. And one of the things that we found out about Courtney is that he was helping the community so much. And so he was actually assisting single mothers. He was helping the homeless. And so with this foundation, we have continued in his memory to keep those things alive. We do an annual book bag giveaway. We do college scholarships. We do Christmas toy giveaway. We help single moms, as well as also we help, the homeless. We feed the homeless. And so what we're doing with this charity ball is we're raising money to benefit the foundation so that way we can continue to help our community. And so we're asking everyone to go to Eventbrite. The keyword is the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. You can also donate at www.copelandmemorial.com. And even if you can't attend the gala yourself, please consider helping a single mom or a mother who has lost a child to gun violence to attend the service. And we appreciate so much everyone who has reached out to us, who made a donation, and we ask that you continue to do so, and we look forward to serving you. And call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. Thanks so much, Santita.
Oh, God bless you, everybody. Please, everybody, please support this wonderful cause. Everybody, we're talking about Ahmaud Arbery. Of course, we saw the convictions of those men who murdered him. We saw that, but that was the state case. Now we have the federal case. There is a difference. They have been able to put racism front and center. Before we go to Dwight McKee, let me ask you this, Attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Why is race now at the center of this case, but it was really not mentioned in the state case? Is that a tactic, or is there something else going on?
Well, I can't know precisely what the prosecutors were thinking, but in most cases, a prosecutor who is trying to obtain a conviction is laser focused on the elements of a crime. So for there to be any conviction, the prosecutor has a burden of proving very specific things. They have to prove that there was intent. They have to prove that a certain act was performed by the defendant, and they have to prove that those two things were in concurrence. All right, and so that's speaking very generally, but for most crimes, the way that the laws are written, they're very specific about what the defendant must have done, what the defendant must have been thinking. And so when a prosecutor is bringing a case, they usually focus on those things. They don't want to risk that a jury is going to become confused or distracted by other information or other evidence that's present, which is not relevant to them meeting their burden of proving these elements of the crime. So even though the prosecutor in the state case was no doubt aware of all of the racial garbage that was part of this, they probably made a decision not to introduce that because of the potential that jurors would become so fascinated by it or so interested in it that they missed the evidence that was essential for them to be aware of and to factor into their deliberations when they're looking at whether the prosecution made their case.
Dwight McKee, what do you make of this case? I mean, we had the state case where we got 3 convictions. These men will be going to jail for the rest of their lives, to prison. But now we've got the federal case, and racism is at the heart of it. I mean, it's a hate crime. We're trying to determine that this is a hate crime. They could not charge these men with a hate crime at the beginning of this process because there was no law on the books in Georgia for hate crimes. Unbelievable. It seems that trying to get these hate crimes through is so hard. That's something Congressman Bobby Rush has been working on for years. What do you make of this case?
Well, I think your lawyers are absolutely correct. I think that the Department of Justice sees this as a slam dunk. They can take kudos, send a signal, and have so much less to lose on this case, because if they do lose the case, because the defendants are already convicted for crimes at the state level, then they can say, well, we did shot our best shot, but at least justice was served. I'm more concerned about these cases that are harder to prove, but are really as intensely set up as hate crimes that the Justice Department walk away from because they're not slam dunks and because they had to put real work in and because they don't run the risk of losing. They walk away from and nothing is done. It seems very basic to me that the young man who was shot at the other day on his FedEx delivery, that is a hate crime. And these guys should be charged with attempted murder as a hate crime. But it seems like the Justice Department is a little more nebulous on these cases because they don't want to run the risk of losing and they think being embarrassed by them.
You know, I mean, Mark Fancher, what is the burden? I mean, if you want to prove, if you're trying to prove a hate crime, what evidence must exist?
Well, it's not precisely defined as in most cases, but you do have to ultimately be able to demonstrate that race was what motivated the crime. And, most of us who are people of color, we can detect racial bias and animus before anybody says anything. I mean, we can walk into a store, we can look at a clerk and know, oh, that's a racist. Or, a cop, in the way that the cop talks to us, we know, oh, he's a racist. I mean, we know it. I mean, because we've experienced it so many times, and we just know it. Not everybody has that kind of radar. And I think that is what is of concern many times to the Justice Department with respect to this particular crime. While all of the circumstances may scream to a person of color that this was a hate crime, that this was racist, unless you have the perpetrator actually using the N-word or saying or doing something else that makes it crystal clear that race was their motivation, then prosecutors get really, really gun shy about trying to bring these charges. So in this case, I've not seen it, but they say that they've got all of this evidence of these guys using, racial expletives and things. And, they obviously feel comfortable that even the person who is the most doubtful, who's most suspicious of any allegations of racism will not be able to ignore or deny that these guys were motivated by race.
I don't know how we have racist acts without racist, but okay, I'll go with it. Noel from the South Side. How you doing, Noel?
Yes. Good morning, Miss Jackson. How
Wonderful
you doing?
hearing your voice.
Okay, I have a comment and then I have a question for Attorney Sanchez. Okay, I live in the 1st Congressional District, and I have not heard from any of the candidates running for Bobby Rush's seat yet. That's my comment. My question for Attorney Sanchez is, in a case out of Brookhaven, Mississippi, in which Brandon Case and his son they shot at Mr. Gibson, what's his name? Is that Gibson? Why did they charge them with just shooting out a car instead of attempted murder?
Well, it took a long time for them to, actually, it took more than a day for the police to pay attention to the case. I mean, which is also crazy, Attorney Fancher. I mean,
yeah,
he had to go with his supervisor to the police. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a matter of what they call prosecutorial discretion. The prosecutor is charged with looking at the evidence that's available and then using their best judgment about which charge to bring that's most appropriate given the evidence, given the facts. Now, just because prosecutors use their discretion to reach certain conclusions doesn't mean that they're right. In fact, too many times they're just, flat out wrong. So that while you and I using our common sense would say that if you aim a gun at somebody and pull the trigger, you're trying to kill them. Somebody else, the prosecutor, might decide, well, maybe they were, but if I charge them with attempted murder, then there's this factor in the case or that factor in the case, which a jury might latch onto and say, well, they weren't really trying to kill him. And so therefore, in order for me to be sure that I get a conviction, I'm going to charge them with a lesser crime. That's the way it happens. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it correct, but that's the dynamic that's frequently present in these cases when prosecutors are making these decisions.
Hey, I want you to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What do you think is going to happen with this second Ahmaud Arbery trial? We had the state case, now we've got the federal case. What do you think about that? What about, let's not forget this, Attorney Fancher and Dwight McKee, let's not forget what's happening with George Floyd. Those officers who stood by and watched Derek Chauvin choke this man to death, well, they're on trial now. And what's interesting is that the Asian American officer said that he was trained to use his knees to restrain suspects. Do you think that that's going to have an impact and a bearing on the case? Starting with you, Mark.
Well.
Oh, okay. No, Dwight, go on. I mean, they were trained to use knees to restrain, I guess, to choke you.
In many cases, what we see is racist. The jury see as normal.
Mm-hmm.
It is what is the traditional acceptable form of behavior. And so if you have, in fact, been trained, or if your exposure has suggested to you that it's fit and proper for you to put your knee on a person's neck, then you don't see that as a black man's neck. You don't see that as racist. You see that as normal. Mm-hmm. If you think that white people, whatever their lot in life is, have the prerogative to stop any given black person and require them to explain themselves to justify why they're at a particular place, and you think that's part of the natural social order, you don't see that. The jury will not see that as racist. They'll see that as normal. And so it's very hard to impose your own values in those cases when your values don't match the values of the jury. Racism is so so intrinsic in the culture of this country. The natural order, people believe, is for white people to be in charge and black people be held accountable to them. And somehow, if they're not allowing themselves to be held accountable, they are resistant or insubordinate or a threat.
Well, I mean, Mark, we constantly hear that all you need to do is comply and just do what they tell you. I'm like, but every time we do that, when we comply, we die. I mean, it's like, I mean, the McMichaels, they were saying, he was frightening me. He was fighting me. I'm like, are you crazy? You got a gun. Same thing with George Floyd. It just happens over and over and over again. I mean, how are we supposed to behave when we are interacting with the McMichaels of the world and even the police? Attorney Fancher.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. I think you're exactly right. The only choice that we're left with many times is, the idea that if we comply, then we still might die, but at least there's a chance that we won't. If we don't comply, we're guaranteed to die, which is a horrible choice, which really points to the need for us to go far beyond the limitations that are placed on us by the political system and by existing processes, procedures, institutions, to figure out a way for us to somehow shake free of this entire structure. And that's our task. I mean, we're trying to survive right now. We're trying to just get from day to day without some crazy, civilian racist or some crazy cop killing us. But we got to get free of all of that, because the existing systems, they don't provide a remedy for us. We have no safe haven. We have nobody to protect us, and it's not unprecedented. I mean, if you think back to 1966, when Huey Newton and Bobby Seale took a look at the community, and they saw that the police, who were supposed to protect people, were the ones who were on a rampage through the communities in Oakland, committing crimes, violent crimes against black people on a nightly basis. They had nowhere to turn. I mean, the people were guaranteed to get brutalized or to get killed by the police themselves, and so they figured we just got to shake free of all of this. And they decided that they were going to establish an organization that would protect the community from the police. We may not want to, we may not see it appropriate to form precisely that type of organization, but we've got to come up with something that will protect us, independent of what the government and the law says are supposed to be our protection, because it just ain't working.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, Mark, I don't know if you remember this or not, but down south they had a group called the Deacons of Defense, and their role was to become the buffer between the oppression of mostly law enforcement we come out of a culture, a civil rights culture, where we were really nonviolent, and our goal was nonviolence. But the misunderstanding of nonviolence for us was both a philosophy and a tactic. But it wasn't, it was passive resistance. But it was not nonviolence to the extent of you were not supposed to defend yourself of your family or your family. It's inconsistent for America to want to send us to a place like Europe to defend their democracy and give us guns and bombs and planes and say be violent in the defense of other people's democracy. But at home, you have no right to defend your own family and defend yourselves for the sake of democracy. And so they want us to arm us to go to Europe, but to de-arm us to defend our own homes. It's very important, I think you make a very important point, that at some point we have to resolve that we have to try to be, as Reverend Jackson say, as nonviolent as we can be. And he used to say as violent as we must be, which is why we really formed Black Men Pushing and Black Men Moving to protect our women and children in Operation Breadbasket and Operation Push.
Yeah, I mean, literally, that's what happened. But it was this was no first strike. This was not about being violent, everybody. We've got to work through all of this, Attorney Mark Fancher, because you see when these young men comply, they die. And the women too. Let's not forget about Sandra Bland. No, don't forget about Breonna. I mean, just don't forget. Don't forget. I mean, it's just we're all vulnerable here. And as Black people are vulnerable, everybody else will be vulnerable too. Eventually, it's going to work its way out to you with canaries in the mine. So we've got to work through these trials, and we've got to look at what's happening with the George Floyd trial. We need to pay attention to that. We need to see how they're going to treat these. What? No, we've got to pay attention to how what's going to happen with these, with the police officers who said they were trained to restrain with a knee. And we got to find out how that's going to happen. How that case. I mean, is Derek Chauvin going to take the weight for everything? Do they not have any responsibility for having watched this young man be choked to death? What's going to happen with these three men who killed Ahmaud Arbery? And yes, they all killed him. One man pulled the trigger, but they all killed him. They all did that. What's going to happen to this young man who was just going to work, going about his business? DeMontario Gibson, down in Mississippi, working for FedEx. And then he is chased by a white father and his son. And they're shooting at him. But wait a minute, the police didn't come out and help him. No. He had to get his supervisor, Dwight, and Attorney Fancher, and then go to the station the next day to get this paid attention to. Come on, you guys. I got 20 seconds.
The young man who was asleep, and the police with a key did a no-knock, opened his door. He looked at him. He had a gun for his own protection because he also worked for FedEx. And they just shot him to death. Unannounced, just bang, bang, bang.
And we're seeing this proliferation of these cases, everybody. We've got to pay attention, and you've got to ask why. And more than that, you have to say no more. No more. No one deserves this. And ultimately, I tell you, if it happens to me today, if not tonight, in a few days hence, it will happen to you. Injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere. It ought to concern you. It ought to concern you. I love you, everybody. And I love the fact that from all of these different backgrounds, we are one family. God bless you. We're going to work it out. We're going to work it out together. Stay right here on the YouTube channel of the Santita Jackson Show. YouTube channel, Santita Jackson Show. We're going to get some closing thoughts from Attorney Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee. And sending you much love. Thank you, Matt, for a great show. God bless you, everybody. See you in the morning, God willing. Let's change the world.
Attention homeowners that have ever had a broken
Matt,
appliance.
if you could turn that down for me, sweetie.
That's a joke, right?
Thank you so much. Dwight and Mark,
Yep.
do you all have anything else you'd like to say? I'm just watching all this compliance, and it's just crazy because it seems like it doesn't even matter if you comply or not. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll say this, and then I do have to leave. But it seems terrifying and horrifying. But I think we have to remember and not believe that God is not working here. Because all of these things that we're seeing, and things that are far worse have been happening for generations. But what's happening now is that the contradictions are being raised to the surface so that they're in plain view and everybody can see them. All right. So, God's making it possible now for us to really focus on them and to address them. So I would just suggest that we not get demoralized or discouraged. I think we should be invigorated because something's happening. And I think that it falls to us to rise to the occasion. The opportunity is presenting itself for us to address something that should have been addressed generations ago. And the question is, will we do it or will we just sort of cower in fear? And I think we should just, stand up and fight back and do what we got to do to take care of this. And on the other side of this, I think it's something that is better than we might have ever imagined.
I believe that. I do believe. I'm with you. I believe God is in this. All of these things coming together, even if it were just one event. I mean, Emmett Till, God was in that. God is in all of this. And we have an opportunity here, everybody, not to build back better, but to get right. But it's our choice. It's our choice. We are but a thought away from making the world the manifestation of God's vision in heaven. We're just a thought away. We have to start thinking differently. Dwight and Mark, my mother witnessed a carjacking on the block where my parents have lived for more than 50 years. About a week and a half ago. I was like, what? These guys walked up into the driveway of one of their neighbors and, just would have killed this woman. It's unbelievable. But even there's an opportunity for us to grow and for us to get better. And so Dwight, your thoughts?
Well, the police by and large don't want us just to comply. They want us to grapple. And so our real struggle is, how much of your manhood are you willing to admit? If Dr. King said, don't ever let a man take anybody, let anybody take away your manhood. And so that's the real risk you run, is do you maintain your dignity and potentially die, or do you gravel and maybe live? But even then, maybe not live. But it's whether or not you are complying or whether or not you're graveling is really subjective. And so for you to not really humble yourself in front of all these policemen, to them you're being insubordinate. Is that, boy, when I tell you to do something, you do what I tell you to do, whether or not I have the right, the authority, whether or not it's lawful, you do it because I said do it. And that's the essence of white supremacy. And that's what the struggle is how much do you respond and run the risk of losing your life and your family, or how much do you strategically really try to de-escalate the situation and save your fight for a later day? That's the struggle with being a black man and a black woman, a man in America.
Yeah, it's just about holding on to our humanity. That is something that I must say that Jack Odell told me. He said, remember, out of all of these different identities you have, you are first a human being. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Never will forget it as long as I live. He said, you are first a human being, Santita. He said, before you even black, sweetheart, before you are a young lady. I was about 15. He said, you are first a human being. And don't ever forget that. And we all deserve to be treated humanely. Think about that, everybody. Think about it. Dwight, Mark, do you all have anything else you want to say before we go? Is there anything that has been left unsaid today? Gentlemen? All righty. Well, I'm going to let you all go. I love you so much, and I thank you, for being with us today. And I love y'all. I love y'all, love y'all. We just get up, L. Stanley Davis and Dave. Dave, you're up there before everybody. And Jewel.
And Jackie Bill was my mentor. God rest his soul.
Oh my goodness, what a gem he was, huh? And what a gem he always will be. You know, just what a gem he'll always be. We learned so much from Jack Odell. We learned so much from Jack Odell, and to think, I mean, what a journey he's had. I think that there's a documentary. He is one of these persons, everybody, and those of us who knew him need to tell his story. We just met his his granddaughter the other week, Dwight. She was just here.
Quickly, I never conversation that Jack Odell and your father had is when Sweetback came out. I remember your father was really excited about it because it was one of the first black movies that had come out since the 40s and 50s. And he had gone to see it, and he came back and he was telling us about it. He said, "Boy, that Sweetback is quite a movie." And Jack said, "No, I don't think we need to go in that direction." And Reverend Jackson said, "Well, with the movie is telling it just like it is." And Jack looked at him and said to him and me and say, "Jesse, we don't need to always tell it like it is. Sometimes we need to tell it like it needs to be." And It was a lesson for all of us to always aspire to the higher mark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad because I'm sure when that happened, my father was maybe about 30 when that movie came out. 29 or 30. He was a child. A very, very young man. And my parents had the good sense to surround themselves with their elders, which is something that we need to get back to. They had the Jack Odells and the Percy Suttons and the Reverend Clay Evans and the Mrs. Luther Bay Evans and the Albertina Walkers, and I can just keep on going. The Mrs. Helen Maybell Anglin. They had their elders, Dr. King, they had their elders to help to guide them. Today, the youth are leading the youth. And Dwight, I think that is something, we're missing the mark there. I think we should all be in dialogue with each other. But my father and mother had a Jack Odell. They had a Dr. Alvin Poussant. They had Reverend D.E. King. They had Reverend Clarence Cobb. They had their elders who could say to them, you know what? And who did say to them, no, we need to go this away. This away. That's important. That's really important. We don't have that now. We don't have that now. We don't have it. And we are paying the price for it. We're paying the price, everybody. Because I mean, I was looking at I was looking at the Super Bowl halftime show. Wonderful. That having been said, these are all middle-aged people who are almost 60, looking like teenagers. I think that's great. I'm glad you're aging well, but we ought to begin to really appreciate the virtues of God giving you time. If my father said, if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. There's a lot of stuff that we've gotten caught up in that's what did Jack say? This is now, we need to let people know not how it is, but the way it used to be.
No, what it needs to
What
be.
it needs to be. What it needs to be. And that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go. Where we need to go. So thank you, Dwight, and thank you for that, Jim, this morning. Boy, how wonderful was that? I'm sending you much love, Matt, sending you much love, Mark, sending everybody much love. Love you, everybody. Love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.